Okay, today I wanted to talk about product expansion. So, one of the things that is a consistent question for us and for a lot of the brands we work with is now that we have this current SKU that is actually working quite well, where do we want to go next? Now, if you're a D2C brand, the reason you want to ask this question, generally speaking, is to increase LTV of your customer because once you've acquired that customer, then the more you are able to offer them or sell them, you don't need to reacquire them. And so selling them something new, your marginal profit from that new sale is significantly higher. For a SaaS company, it is roughly similar. And often for a SaaS company, the TAM expansion that comes with product expansion is quite significant, which may or may not be the case for a D2C company. But if, and we'll talk about how I think about this, but if you do it well, I think it really could be, right? So how do you take product expansion and actually make it TAM expansion? So the principle that I use to think about this is, let's just say your product does something today. The first thing you want to do is look at what are the things that are upstream of you and what are the things that are downstream of you. So I'll give you a good example. So something uh, the thing that I always end up buying D2C very often is like I'll buy clothes and then I actually buy non-alcoholic beer. So like consumables and things that so like this shirt, for example, is from Marine Layer. Now, upstream of clothing, I think is like, potentially like essentials. So like socks, underwear, things like that is, because it's like, hey, no matter what, you need to have that, and then you can put your clothes on, and so on and so forth. And then downstream of that is like accessories, right? So it's like you clothe, and then okay, now you have all of these accessories, right? Uh, or fancier clothes, right? And you'll see that for apparel companies, that's like generally the way that they expand. For a software company, is a little bit different. It's like who are the partners who you're integrating with upstream and downstream. And so for Fermat, for example, upstream of us is Meta, uh, and downstream of us is Shopify, right? And so for us, the thing that we need to think about a lot is like, okay, how do we continue to build more features that make it easier and easier for a brand as they think about what they need to do to interact with Meta and make it easier and easier for them to manage their backend on Shopify without encroaching on either, right? So because that's actually just not our aspiration. And so that's like one of the things to do. Another good example of this, like the apparel example, I think was not a great example, but like cookware is a slightly better example. So downstream of cookware is the food, right? So once you buy cookware, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to buy the food in order to actually like utilize the cookware. And so then you can ask yourself, how do you make it easier and easier to go from selling the cookware to actually acquiring the food that's going to be the most interesting to use with that cookware, right? Now, the other way of thinking about this is like, what are your complements or what are the other things that people are using around the same problem statement? So like for Fermat and others, a simple complement would be like a website A/B testing tool, right? It's like, okay, great. You can use Fermat for deploying all of these satellite sites for these unique experiences. And then in conjunction with that, if you want to, you could do A/B testing on your home website for all of the aggregated traffic to see what is the things that is going to be most impactful to make changes to your home website, given all of the various forms of traffic you're sending to it. If you're a D2C brand, a complement, depending on the category, this one's a little harder for me to think off the top of my head. By the way, all of these are completely unscripted. So let's just say a good example of a complement. So I'm going to go back to apparel. I'm putting on my clothes in the morning in my room. What are things that are a complement? Maybe like the furniture in which I store it, right? So like the chest of drawers and things like that. And so then the question becomes like, okay, these are all things that serve you in that same problem category, uh, but they serve completely different functions. And so how do you actually think about what are the things that you could do from a product perspective in order to make it easier for somebody to solve the problem in general that they have at the time that they are using your product? So that's roughly how I think about product expansion. Hopefully that's helpful and gives you some interesting ideas for what are things that you can start looking at as you think about expanding what you're doing.